The science fiction project was based on The Penultimate Truth by Philip Dick, and it was written in 1964. So when beginning that project, I carefully researched the period when it was written and discovered that there was a huge amount of research to be found surrounding the Cold War era, and in particular propaganda from the USSR. And that instantly gave me something to anchor the piece visually on. For the inspiration on this project, I looked a lot at clock mechanisms and used magnifying glasses to enlarge the intricate little cogs inside of clocks and watches. The graduation project, which I was involved with, required a set build. I decided to incorporate a lot of ceiling pieces into the set, which allowed for the camera to have real freedom during the fast fight sequences.
Leave him alone.
We carefully looked at the type of moves that he would want to incorporate into the fight and decided how the set could help that. So a lot of the furniture is actually made out of foam in order to make it more safe. I think a good production designer is somebody who is full of ideas all the time and is able to bounce off other people's ideas as well. Somebody that can really gel with directors and get onto their wavelength, as well as inspiring them and providing lots of new options.
The Character of Place project was a project we had to build a set in a day. We decided to warp the space so that the person, when they were stood at the back, looked really small in the set. I got the inspiration was from a burnt out building. The film architecture project was a palace and a tomb that I designed. So the palace is very decorated, which is what I'm really interested in, and is full of pattern and jewels. The initial idea came from designs in Islamic patterns and the colours of sort of fairy tales of that time. My graduation project was based on location. The director and I and the cinematographer worked really closely. We've worked together before. We storyboarded the whole thing, so once we bought the caravan it was all photographed and we went about and references everything together. I think a good production designer is someone that has many skills but can coordinate with all the different team members, but also someone who has a sense of variety in their work.
The sci-fi project was in the first year and I chose to redesign Blade Runner. I took a lot of it from the character. I wanted him to look small in a vast environment, and I wanted it to be quite eerie and a dangerous environment. The idea of the model was that it could be two spaces at once. It could be his workshop where you can see over everything that's happening, and also at the end with all the corridors and the tight spaces, it could be a good action sequence for the final fight. On the graduation fiction, one of the biggest challenges actually was shooting inside a Catholic church. The director was very keen that it looked very Catholic and felt very Catholic. And the idea that we came up with to structure the scenes so that we'd start with close-ups, establish the setting that it was a Catholic church before we cut to the wide, and it'd be very empty. When I start a project, I definitely take most of what I first do from the story, from even if it's literal, like the actions of the people, if it's a script, or the themes of the story. That helps me massively. If I know what the story's about, then I already am halfway there to knowing why I'm making these choices.
My sci-fi project was called Sinbad. I created a flying city as all the inhabitants turned to birds.
Everything works with sails and propellers and ropes, and is constructed from heavily carved wood, keeping that feeling of a ship, but with stairs and rope lifts coming from all directions.
My graduation film is called Solstice, and we filmed it up in Oban in Scotland.
The story required major dressing, which was very challenging in such a remote area. I created a fish hatchery, having thoroughly researched the salmon hatchery process in order to recreate the factory in an empty icehouse. I also created an old croft, dance hall, and a solstice party at the lochside, pulling all the locations together with a key colour palette that reflected the landscapes of Western Scotland. Designing the feature film, 1 in 10, the style of the film was very realistic. Everything I designed had to be very believable, and any styles I applied carefully. The main character's experiences at war are constantly haunting her. Many day-to-day occurrences reflect horrific incidents. It was important that the audience understood how the character was falling back into her memories, so I used colours taken from the Iraqi landscape. Because of certain restrictions, I had to create barracks corridors, medical rooms, and a gun room from scratch. And because of the potentially controversial subject of the film, it was really important that I researched everything thoroughly.